I've been in a contemplative mood lately and figured I'd share some of those thoughts with you. And by that I mean, I've been trying to dig my way out of a creative hole, and after racking my brain for days to come up with a good video idea, this is where we're at. It's so bright, I wish I had brought my sunglasses, but when I left it was still overcast, so I'm just gonna be very squinty. Lately it's been one of those phases where it's pretty hard to come up with good ideas and everything. It usually comes in the form of a crash after a hyper-productive phase, which I had just recently. You know, a couple of weeks ago, everything was going fantastically. I felt inspired. There's one thing after the other that I wanted to do and record, do tests and blah, 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 this and that and the other. It was all great, and it was like manic productivity, followed by a week of return to baseline, and now we're in a crash. The past couple of days have just been trying to come up with the right kind of ideas, shall we say. It's not hard to come up with ideas, but they need to be good. A lot of time is spent considering different things, maybe even starting a video and discarding it because I decide it's not good enough. The good content needs to fulfill three needs. That's aside from the basic stuff like camera gear and microphone and knowing how to operate that, blah, blah, blah. But it's primarily, you need to have the knowledge to talk about the subject in most cases. Sometimes you can get away without, but even then, even if it's just entertainment, you still need to know how to entertain people. There's still a certain amount of knowledge involved, right, and required. Two, it should be something that you care about, genuinely. Some people squeeze by without, but the audience is generally fairly decent at picking out the sellouts or whatever you want to call it. And three, it needs something that people care about. You know, if it can be something that you are super passionate and enthusiastic about, if your audience doesn't care, then what's the point, right? It's ironic because I have a long to-do list. Every time I get an idea for a video, I write it down, or rather, I create an empty folder that I name accordingly so that I remember what it was. And there's plenty. I've been scrolling down, like, no, I can't do that right now, or this is not good enough. I think of something, and I'm like, oh, hang on. I've already done that a few years ago, and I don't have enough to add to justify redoing that. And then there's a bunch of other things that I have in the making, you know, things that I'm waiting on right now. You know, something that is supposed to be made within the next couple of months or so, and some materials that I need, things like that. Sometimes you just gotta hurry up and wait, you know, until things arrive. But of course, YouTube waits for no one, so you still have to keep putting stuff up. And I don't want to put up garbage, I say while making this, but at least it's heartfelt, you know? You know, it's easy for us old-timers on YouTube to focus on how much more difficult it is now to maintain an audience and all of that algorithm shenanigans, blah, blah, blah. But I keep seeing that it's much easier now for new and upstarting channels to become popular. And that's a great thing. You see someone who just started fairly recently, and there's something genuine, authentic about it, and they get some traction. And this is fantastic to see. I mean, that's what YouTube was originally about. You know, we tend to complain about how corporatized it has become now, but nobody really seems to talk about how that's been a resurgence too, kind of a back to the roots sort of deal. Sure, there's so many channels now that most of them are never going to get millions of views or whatever, but just some decent exposure, enough for them to keep doing what they do and, you know, just do whatever they're passionate about, show you parts of their life and all of that. It's great. Another thing I've been thinking about a lot lately is what if scenarios. Positive ones, by the way, not like catastrophizing. I'm a maximizer at heart. I always try to figure out what can I do to improve a situation? What would be better than this? That involves a lot of thinking. If I made this major change, wouldn't that be better? In particular, lately, I've been somewhat homesick for Vancouver Island. up to that point, there wasn't even really a place that I considered home. I've always had kind of nomadic leanings. But that's been a thing, and even I find myself sometimes thinking, what if we move back to Europe? Not that I'm planning that, and not that I really want to do that. I've been kind of obsessed with other places lately. You know, the grass is greener on the other side, that kind of thing, which I'm perfectly aware of course. Having moved enough between very different places that I know that, no, it's not greener, it's just different, it's a different color, you know? It's not greener, it's like more bluish or more reddish or whatever the hell. And it's not juicier, it's just different. That has been the one constant, I suppose. The need for novelty, new experiences. Always got to try something different, which of course doesn't always work out so well. But then no matter what you do, no matter where you go, how many places you've lived, it's great because it expands your horizon and you learn more, you grow as a person and all that, as opposed to being stuck in the same place all your life, which has its benefits too. Because the problem with this is that no matter where you are, you miss something somewhere. And if you are a maximizer, there's just no way around that. Like, you cannot smush different places together to create the ultimate place that has everything you want, everything you like. But then, you always long for something. Like, I remember this thing that I really loved back then. Like, for example, Europe. There's so much rich history there. So much old architecture and museums everywhere. And then you can travel so much within Europe because there are so many different countries, right? If you drive in Canada, if you drive for 2 hours, you're probably still in the same province. Whereas in Europe, you might have crossed 4 countries. By the way, a little PSA for the tourists. Good rocks, bad rocks. You don't want to be on the black rocks, because if they're wet or have been wet recently, that means you can be swept off them. Because sometimes waves just, like that, waves just appear out of nowhere. Anyway, so although I'm probably doing the maximizing too much, some people, or many people, don't do it enough, I think. Because the general trend, if you will, is that you stick to something, like you make a decision way too early on in life. I mean, teenagers and young adults are supposed to decide what to do for the rest of their lives. It's like, what do you want to be? As a kid, basically, where you haven't found yourself yet. How are you supposed to determine that? There's no way. When you're 18 or whatever, you're supposed to decide what to do with the rest of it. I was completely different when I was 18. There's just no comparison. It's okay to change your mind. It's generally frowned upon, especially for dudes. In general, we're supposed to just be firm. We're supposed to decide something and then never change our mind, because changing your mind is weak. No, it's smart, all right? If you change your mind in the face of new evidence, that's the intelligent thing to do. Sometimes it's good to reevaluate and think, what am I doing right now? What I'm doing now, is this really what I'm the happiest with? Is this what I want to keep doing the same way? Or should I change something maybe? Or experiment with something new? And the older you get, the less opportunity you have for it. So experiment while you're young, I guess. And maybe still do it when you get older. It might prevent you from becoming a cranky, judgmental curmudgeon who's just like, I don't understand what the damn kids are doing these days. I do that sometimes, The TikTok zoomies do confuse me sometimes, I'm not gonna lie, but I try to keep a reasonably open mind, not to the point where my brain falls out, but open enough. Lately I've been watching travel channels and other videos about different places, from cycling in Amsterdam to walking around in Tokyo, and there's a guy who's voluntarily homeless who explores Japan with nothing but a skateboard and a tent, that's all good stuff. I like to see different places and different lives and lifestyles and all of that. It's really cool. Sometimes I think about these things, you know, different paths. So many divergent paths, let alone the different lives. We live in parallel universes or whatever, if that's a thing. You never know, right? Anyway, we'll get back to the regular content, swords and other nerdy stuff, soon enough. Right after this video, probably, or either way, soon. But until then, thanks for listening. I'm surprised you made it this far. So kudos to you and your attention span. Not many people have that nowadays, or in general. Thanks for watching. Take care.